So something else you highlighted in your book that really stood out to me was you mentioned how people throw money and ads on less popular books or series rather than throwing money at the books and series that are already doing well to further increase their reach. Why do you think some people do that?
I think it's probably the same kind of part of our brain that gets focused on the 1% of reviews that are negative and the 99% ignore the 99% that are positive and kind of discount those. Like we take a lot of the things that go well for granted. And this applies, I think, to a larger aspect of life, but just to keep it in the book marketing realm, like the books that do well, a lot of times it's less effort to do that. And maybe the books that don't do well, we have some sort of special connection or belief in them, or it's like this book that we wrote from our heart or whatever. And a lot of times those books are the ones that don't necessarily resonate as much because they were written for the person rather than the public, which is totally fine. There are a variety of reasons to write, and by no means is making money and writing commercial fiction the only reason to do so. But a lot of times those books that don't do as well kind of fall into that vein where they're not necessarily in a specific subgenre, or they take some unpopular choices with the narrative or don't incorporate some key tropes and things like that. So I think that that's part of the reason where authors might have an emotional attachment to the book. And then there's also always a tendency to focus on the negative or focus on what's not working. And it seems like that's the best way to increase your earnings, where it's like, oh, I have these 20 books over here that aren't selling at all. Let me focus all my effort on those, whereas I have this one series that's killing it. The way the 80-20 rule works is that probably 20% of your books are going to drive 80% of the revenue. In reality, that might be that 5% of your books drive 95 or 99% of the revenue. So you want to double down there with the ad spend, where it might be that $100 invested over here returns $200 or drives X number of sales and page reads, whereas $100 over here drives like $10 in sales. So you're down $90. And it seems like you can work on that over here and grind through it. Sometimes you can make it better, but something that doesn't work from the start usually never works. That's almost always the case. And then something that works marginally well, like you can kind of grow that into something. But the things that really work well tend to work well when they launched, or, after you started learning a bit about marketing. Maybe at the beginning of the launch, you didn't know anything. And then as your career evolved over the next 6 months, year, like then things picked up as you learned new marketing techniques and you applied them and those best practices to the book, and then it started rolling. But once you have kind of like the baseline skills, usually when you launch a book and when the series comes out, tends to be kind of a good indicator of how its future prospects are going to fare. So I wouldn't take too much to the bank there if you're just starting out, where you launched a book and you're like, oh, it's done forever. Like, you probably, marketing wise, have a lot of skills to acquire, which is good. You can learn those and then revisit it. But once you kind of apply those best practices and apply them to the back catalog, and something's still not working, pushing a boulder uphill and then having it fall on you every day is not a pleasant experience and not really recommended. So I'd really focus on the things that are working. Because the other thing is that you inadvertently kill both things. So you have your golden goose over here, and then whatever, you have these things that are a bunch of rocks that you're trying to turn into a goose or something, and it's not working. But meanwhile, you're not feeding the goose, so it dies, and that's not good. And then it's hard to get that momentum back, right? Momentum's a precious thing, both in your own productivity and in your career. And it's not impossible to get it back by any means after a layoff or something happens where you can't publish for a while, but you don't want to do that through either negligence or on purpose, where you're not giving your best series the marketing attention that they deserve.